My perfect sister stole my identity to fund her lavish lifestyle, but her hubris led to her downfall and my sweet revenge. I never thought I'd be writing a story like this. My hands are still shaking, even though it's been months since everything imploded. I'm still processing, still trying to make sense of the tangled mess that was my family and the sister I thought I knew. I guess I'm just looking for some external validation, some assurance that I'm not crazy for feeling what I'm feeling, and that the steps I took, however drastic, were justified. Let's start at the beginning. I, 32, female, have an older sister, Bethany, 35, female. Growing up, Bethany was the golden child. She was beautiful, effortlessly popular, and academically brilliant. Our parents, particularly our mother, worshipped the ground she walked on. I, on the other hand, was always the other daughter. Quiet, studious, a bit nerdy, and far less aesthetically blessed, I quickly learned to exist in Bethany's shadow. It wasn't always malicious, but the constant comparisons, the effusive praise for Bethany's every achievement, and the often dismissive attitude towards mine created a deep-seated resentment within me. I learned early on that to gain any semblance of attention or approval, I had to excel in areas Bethany didn't care about, primarily academics and my art, which I pursued with a quiet passion, while Bethany breezed through life, accumulating accolades and a seemingly endless string of admirers. I worked tirelessly. I put myself through college and then graduate school, taking out student loans and working multiple part-time jobs. I pursued a career in a niche field that I loved, and slowly but surely, I built a comfortable life for myself. I was proud of my independence and the fact that I had achieved everything through my own effort, without relying on anyone, especially not my parents, who were always more focused on Bethany's latest endeavor. Bethany, meanwhile, had a different trajectory. After college, she married her college sweetheart, Mark, a man from a wealthy family. Their wedding was a lavish affair, funded almost entirely by Mark's parents, and our mother spared no expense in reminding everyone of Bethany's fairy tale life. Bethany never really had to work. She dabbled in various artistic pursuits, but nothing ever really stuck. She spent her days at charity luncheons, expensive fitness classes, and high-end boutiques. Her Instagram feed was a curated masterpiece of designer clothes, exotic vacations, and gourmet meals. She lived a life of apparent luxury, and our parents beamed with pride, showcasing her as the epitome of success. I, on the other hand, lived a more modest life. I owned a small but charming house, drove a reliable but not flashy car, and enjoyed quiet evenings at home with my beloved cat and a good book. I was perfectly content, or so I thought. I kept my distance from Bethany's world, opting for polite but infrequent interactions. Family gatherings were usually strained, with Bethany often subtly, or not so subtly, flaunting her wealth and perfect life, while our parents would pepper me with questions about my boring job and why I hadn't found a husband yet. It was exhausting. The first crack in Bethany's perfect facade appeared about 5 years ago. I received a strange call from a credit card company, asking about a delinquent payment on an account I didn't recognize. I explained that I had no such account, and after some investigation, it turned out to be a case of mistaken identity. A very similar name, a similar birth date, but not me. I thought it was just a clerical error and didn't give it much thought. Then, about 3 years ago, things started to get really weird. I began receiving mail for loans I hadn't taken out, and my credit score, which I had meticulously maintained, started to dip. I checked my credit report and was horrified to find multiple accounts opened in my name. Credit cards, personal loans, even a small mortgage on a property I'd never seen. The addresses on these accounts were all different, and none of them were mine. I immediately contacted the credit bureaus and reported identity theft. It was a nightmare. I spent countless hours on the phone, filing police reports, disputing charges, and trying to untangle the web of fraudulent activity. During this stressful period, I confided in my parents, hoping for some support. Their reaction was strangely subdued. My mother, usually so dramatic, seemed almost distant, and my father offered vague platitudes. They suggested it was probably some random hacker and that I should just deal with it. I found their lack of concern unsettling, but I was so overwhelmed with the actual problem that I didn't dwell on it too much. The identity theft continued, sporadically but persistently. Just when I thought I had closed one fraudulent account, another would pop up. It was like playing a frustrating game of whack-a-mole. I installed all the necessary security measures, froze my credit, and kept a vigilant eye on my financial statements. The stress was immense, and it started to take a toll on my health and well-being. I developed anxiety and had trouble sleeping. One evening, while I was meticulously reviewing a statement for a recently opened credit card in my name, I noticed something odd. The purchases listed were for very specific, high-end boutiques and a particular spa that Bethany frequented. A cold dread started to creep over me. It couldn't be, could it? My own sister? The thought was so repulsive, so unthinkable, that I immediately pushed it away, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I started to pay closer attention to the types of purchases being made on these fraudulent accounts. Designer handbags, first-class plane tickets, expensive jewelry, lavish restaurant bills. It was all so. Bethany. My stomach churned with a sickening mixture of suspicion and disbelief that I decided I needed more concrete proof before I could even begin to confront anyone. I reached out to a private investigator, a former police officer recommended by a colleague. I explained my situation, emphasizing the pattern of purchases and my growing suspicion about my sister. He was incredibly discreet and professional. It took him about a month, but the evidence he uncovered was damning. He found multiple instances where Bethany had used my personal information, my social security number, my birth date, even forged my signature on loan applications to open accounts in my name. She had then used these accounts to fund her extravagant lifestyle, making minimum payments just enough to keep them active, but allowing the balances to balloon. She had also set up shell corporations in my name to launder some of the money, making it even harder to trace. The private investigator discovered that Mark's family fortune wasn't as robust as everyone believed, and Bethany had been struggling to maintain her image of wealth. She had accumulated a significant amount of personal debt, and rather than face the music, she had resorted to stealing my identity to keep up appearances. She had been doing this for almost 7 years, starting even before the first strange credit card call. The mistaken identity call had been an early attempt of hers that had backfired, leading her to become more sophisticated in her methods. The report from the private investigator was a thick stack of papers, filled with bank statements, forged documents, and a meticulous timeline of Bethany's fraudulent activities. As I read through it, a profound sense of betrayal washed over me. It wasn't just the financial damage, it was the emotional wound, the realization that my own sister, the one I had always been compared to and overshadowed by, had actively and maliciously set out to destroy my life for her own selfish gain. She hadn't just stolen money, she had stolen my peace of mind, my trust, and my sense of security. I was furious, heartbroken, and utterly devastated. I confronted my parents first, armed with the private investigator's report. I laid out all the evidence, watching their faces contort from disbelief to dawning horror. My mother, for once, was speechless. My father looked utterly defeated. They tried to deny it at first, to make excuses, but the evidence was irrefutable. I demanded to know if they had known. My father, in a quiet, broken voice, admitted that they had suspected something for a while, but Bethany had always been so good at manipulating them, at making them believe her stories, that they had chosen to look the other way. They had even, at times, helped her cover her tracks, believing they were protecting her. They had, in their twisted way, enabled her. The betrayal from my parents cut almost as deep as Bethany's. They had sacrificed my financial well-being and my emotional stability to protect their perfect daughter. The next step was to confront Bethany. I arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a lawyer's office. I didn't want to be alone with her. I brought my own lawyer, a stern, no-nonsense woman who had been helping me with the identity theft cases. Bethany arrived with a smug smirk on her face, clearly thinking this was just another family squabble she could sweet-talk her way out of. Her husband, Mark, looked uncomfortable, but stayed by her side. My parents were there too, looking like ghosts. I started calmly, outlining the evidence, piece by piece, as my lawyer presented the documents. Bethany's smirk slowly faded, replaced by a look of growing panic. She tried to interrupt, to deny, to accuse me of fabricating everything, but my lawyer shut her down every time. When I revealed the extent of her fraud, the shell corporations, the forged signatures, the sheer volume of debt she had accumulated in my name, her face went white. "How could you, Bethany?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "How could you do this to me, your own sister?" She finally broke down, not with genuine remorse, but with a torrent of self-pity and blame. She blamed Mark's family for not giving them enough money. She blamed me for having a boring life that she could easily exploit. She blamed our parents for not understanding her needs. It was a masterclass in narcissistic deflection. Mark, who had been silent up until this point, finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but firm. "Bethany, what have you done?" he asked, looking at her as if he was seeing a stranger. He had no idea, he claimed, about the extent of her deception. He knew she spent a lot, but he believed it was coming from their shared accounts, not from identity theft. The private investigator had told me Mark's family was known for being tight-fisted with their wealth, which explained Bethany's desperation, but it didn't excuse her actions. My lawyer presented Bethany with a choice. Either she immediately confessed to her husband and family about the full extent of her fraud, agree to pay back every penny she had stolen, plus interest, and surrender herself to the authorities, or I would press criminal charges myself. The choice was hers. I told her that I was no longer willing to live with the constant fear and financial burden she had imposed on me. I wanted my life back. Bethany, still in a state of shock, looked at Mark, then at our parents, who were silently weeping. The golden child, finally caught. Mark, utterly disgusted, told her that he wouldn't stand by her if she chose to continue her lies. He told her he would divorce her and cut her off financially, leaving her with nothing. Our parents, realizing the gravity of the situation, finally sided with me, pleading with Bethany to do the right thing. It was a shocking turn of events, to say the least. After a tense silence, Bethany, defeated, agreed to my terms. She confessed everything to Mark, who looked absolutely heartbroken. He immediately began the divorce proceedings, citing her fraudulent activities as grounds. He was furious that she had not only deceived him but had also tarnished his family's reputation. My parents, guilt-ridden, offered to help me financially, but I refused. I wanted Bethany to pay for her crimes, not them. Bethany's carefully constructed world came crashing down. Mark filed for divorce, and her wealthy in-laws, utterly mortified by the scandal, cut her off completely. She lost access to her luxury lifestyle, her designer clothes, her expensive car. Her friends quickly abandoned her when the news of her fraud became public. Her Instagram feed, once a testament to her perfect life, went silent. She moved into a tiny, run-down apartment, forced to get a job for the first time in her adult life. The fall from grace was spectacular. I, meanwhile, worked with the authorities and my lawyer to ensure Bethany faced the consequences of her actions. Because she agreed to cooperate and pay restitution, she avoided jail time, but she was put on probation and ordered to pay back every single penny she had stolen, plus significant interest, over the next decade. She also had to undergo extensive financial counseling and therapy. The debt she had accumulated was staggering, and I knew it would take her years, if not decades, to pay it all back. The emotional toll of all of this has been immense. My relationship with my parents is fractured. They constantly apologize, but the trust is gone. I visit them sometimes, but it's still strained. I'm still in therapy, dealing with the trauma of the identity theft and the betrayal. But I'm also experiencing a profound sense of relief and, dare I say it, justice. For the first time in my life, I feel seen, validated. The other daughter finally stood up for herself, and the golden child finally faced the consequences of her actions. Sometimes, I still catch glimpses of Bethany. She looks hollowed out, her once vibrant beauty faded. She works a low-wage job, commutes on public transport, and lives a life that is a stark contrast to her former existence. And while I feel a pang of sadness for the sister I lost, the one who chose greed and deceit over family, I don't regret my actions. I fought for myself, for my future, and for the peace of mind that she tried to steal from me. It was a long, painful battle, but I finally won. And for the first time in my life, I feel truly free. I know this is a long read, but I needed to get it all out. Any thoughts, advice, or just commiseration would be appreciated. Thanks for listening.